You are listening to CBCC Global Research Podcast with scientific experts on some of the biggest issues and questions about oncology clinical trials in the Indian landscape.
We are facing a new reality, a new normal that has been coined. While we embrace this change, this has added to the change of using virtual channels throughout the medical industry for business and therapeutic insights. Today, we are discussing the current trends in oncology clinical research and some of the biggest challenges facing the Indian healthcare ecosystem. I am Ivan D'Souza, Director of Scientific Writing. With me are three expert speakers: Dr. Chirag Desai, a leading Indian oncologist; Dr. Sandeep Singh, Vice President, Clinical Development from CBCC Global Research; and Mr. Veerendra Panuganti from Shilpa Medicare, a leading Indian pharmaceutical company that manufactures oncology active pharmaceutical ingredients. Now let's jump in right in the discussion. Dr. Desai, let's start this off with you. It will be nice if you can give a short overview on oncology and new treatment strategies.
Hi everyone, I am glad to be here. Cancer is one of the deadliest diseases in the world that continues to be challenging to treat even today. What I will do is that I will tell you something about the numbers of cancer in our country and the efforts which are ongoing in the treatment of cancer and the research on cancer globally as well as locally. So in India, there are currently over 3 million cancer patients surviving with cancer, and about 1.3 million new cancer cases are added each year. According to WHO, if the Indians do not die of any other disease for 100 years, 1 in 10 Indians is likely to develop a cancer during the lifetime. And in India, breast cancer is the commonest cancer, and this is followed by oral cancer, cervical cancer, lung cancer, stomach cancer, and colorectal cancer. So we need to cover a large ground to improve the outcome of these cancers, and that's possible only with ongoing research efforts. So pharmaceutical industry and the government across the world are spending billions to fund the research initiatives that are aimed to finding the cure for all these types of cancers. In fact, in 2020, oncology was the largest therapeutic area in terms of clinical trial activity and is the top therapeutic area for both industry and non-industry sponsored clinical trials. Among the industry sponsored clinical trials, Eli Lilly and Novartis have the most planned studies in oncology. Currently in oncology, a majority of trials are in phase 1 and phase 2. Due to the demand of novel therapeutic approaches that address unmet medical needs in patients with cancer, a large number of early stage clinical trials are being planned to investigate these novel therapies in clinical settings. In oncology research, a majority of clinical trials are industry sponsored, with most trials planned for solid tumors as compared to hematological malignancies. And an increase in global burden of cancer has boosted the industry investment in oncology. The US leads the number of planned clinical trials that were to be initiated this year, followed by China, Australia, France, Canada, and the UK. Among the clinical trials that are to be completed by the end of this year, most trials are currently in phase 2, followed by phase 4 trials that narrowly outnumber the phase 1 clinical trials. Novartis is the industry sponsor with the highest number of clinical trials that are scheduled for completion by the end of this year. As of today, there are 1327 oncology-related clinical trials in the Indian Clinical Trial Registry, of which 443 trials have been completed, 322 are ongoing, 61 have been terminated, 500 clinical trials are not yet recruiting, and there is no information on the status of one clinical trial.
Dr. Sandeep, what is the current scenario of oncology-related clinical research in India?
India continues to be the preferred destination for contract research and clinical trials due to the huge cost advantage. Contract research organizations in India have the capabilities to offer a wide variety of services in clinical research, such as resources to conduct clinical trials, data management, biostatistics, and laboratory services. A clinical trial conducted in India is about 50 to 60% cheaper than the same trial being conducted in a developed world. India also presents a high growth market for anti cancer medication. Industry sponsored phase 2 and phase 3 clinical trial study sites in India have grown by over 100% in last decade. The union government has amended Schedule Y of Drugs and Cosmetic Act and formulated progressive policies that have been tremendously useful in growing clinical research, especially in the field of oncology. India has an excellent record of delivering clinical data that satisfy international regulatory requirements. India has over 700,000 specialty sites, 221 medical colleges with highly trained, skillful, and experienced English speaking medical staff with state of art infrastructure to facilitate the conduct of oncology clinical trials. Owing to the large population, India also has a high rate of participant recruitment that is nearly 7 times that of US, a treatment naive patient pool. A large cancer patient population, huge unmet medical need, availability of cancer registries and databases, and stipulate regulations and regulatory bodies. There is also a mix of both public and private healthcare providers. The insurance coverage is much lower compared to US and most European countries. Indian regulations are almost on par with international standards that balance the industry need and ensure the protection of clinical trial participants. Indian clinical institutions and research sites have their own well developed ethics committees that are similar to ICH GCP guidelines. The Indian government has also lifted import duties on clinical trial supplies. The Drug Controller General of India now permits the export of clinical trial specimens without any specific requirements to be followed. Clinical trials are exempted from sales tax for foreign clients. And so, Indian patients with cancer stands to benefit in these trials by getting access to novel cancer treatments free of cost.
The next one is for Mr. Virender. What are the challenges faced by sponsors in conducting clinical trials, especially during COVID 19?
COVID 19 has certainly had an impact on the conduct of clinical trials in terms of affecting the operations of clinical trial programs and limiting access to the trials and newer therapies, especially for the most vulnerable population. This is due to the self-isolation of quarantine of participants and the study site personnel, personal shortage, difficulty in enrolling patients, travel restrictions to a region, blocked access to clinical trial sites in hospitals, which may have been converted into COVID treatment centers, or due to study sites being reassigned to other critical tasks, for example, administrative centers or drug storage sites, delays in trial assessment, and postponement of monitoring activities are the common challenges that sponsors have been facing. Additionally, there have also been challenges in interactions between sponsors and CROs about modifying trial procedures, intentional or unintentional protocol modifications or deviations, which could affect scientific integrity, data interpretation, and conclusion of trials. There have also been decreased follow-up visits and poorer mental or physical health of the participants. There is even the possibility of patients getting infected with the coronavirus that could interfere with the results of the treatment, risks, and benefits. Specifically to the oncology clinical trial, due to COVID-19 pandemic, there is a limited availability of ancillary services such as radiology and surgery. Sponsors of the study have to give careful considerations on how these challenges will impact ongoing studies. There are issues with missing data, inability to verify source data for completeness or data lock, and safety monitoring issues. We also cannot start new studies that are approved at sites.
Dr. Desai, what are some of the biggest challenges facing the Indian healthcare ecosystem?
So India is facing some challenges so far as the healthcare ecosystem is concerned. A majority of Indian population is unaware about the important issue concerning their own health, and that we are appreciating in the way the Indian population is handling the COVID crisis, especially in rural areas. The healthcare system in rural India lacks adequate infrastructure and healthcare expertise. There is the inequalities in the access between rich and poor, as well as urban and rural areas. Illiteracy, low educational status, unemployment, poverty, and inadequate access are some of the issues which our rural healthcare system is facing. There is also poor access to healthcare in rural areas, which increase the odds of diseases and even deaths. In fact, some of the primary health centers in rural areas are having the lack of basic facilities such as beds and wards and the manpower and so on and so forth. Even in urban areas, the majority of population find healthcare to be simply unaffordable, and with most of the healthcare expenditure borne by the patients and their families. So the catastrophic disease like cancer is certainly likely to lead the patient and the family to immense financial difficulties. Also, in the private healthcare sector, there is still a lack of regulation in terms of cost of healthcare that may lead many patients to defer the treatment. Preventive oncology is the important part of cancer screening in the developed countries like US and certain European countries, and a formal cancer screening is lacking in our country. Maybe except for a few big name private hospitals in the metropolitan cities, there are hardly any hospitals that are offering a formal cancer screening. So large population of patients miss being diagnosed, and cancer is only detected after metastasis or in the later stages.
This question is for Veerendra. What are some of the solutions to overcome challenges associated with clinical research in India?
Well, virtualization of several aspects of clinical trials should be promoted, such as remote consent, remote randomization, and remote data capture and reporting. We could use technology to closely monitor patient participation and drug supply to minimize disruptions and offer in-home clinical services. CBCC is doing exceptionally good in terms of timely executing of patient visits, IP supplies, ensuring availability of other study materials to sites. Remote Edge, a tool developed and validated by CBCC for remote monitoring, has been extremely helpful in this difficult time.
Dr. Sandeep, how can clinical research organization mitigate these challenges?
CBCC Global Research is a CRO that offers a variety of services in clinical research, including regulatory affairs, medical writing, early phase clinical trials, phase 2 and phase 3 clinical trials, clinical trial monitoring, and core lab services. We provide high quality, affordable, and strategic solutions for all phases of clinical trial. CBCC has had 35 years of cancer patient care experience and a strong experience in oncology clinical trials through our partnership with UCLA. We are also well equipped to support sponsors for multi-country trial execution with a very strong presence in USA, India, Europe, and other APAC countries. We specialize in conduct of phase 1 to 4 drug and device clinical trials globally. Our experts provide objective, accurate, timely review and analysis of pre-specified study-related variables. Our team has extensive experience with clinical trial design, data interpretation, and analysis of global study management. Our team identifies suitable sites with the necessary infrastructure that is required for a specific clinical trial and coordinates through the project lifecycle. We also ensure timely analysis and delivery of data in the prescribed format. We assist in patient recruitment and select and finalize the inclusion and exclusion criteria carefully. We have capabilities to promote health awareness and advertise clinical trials to recruit participants. Especially during these times, we have the facilities to support the conduct of clinical trials remotely and the necessary personnel. We can also effectively integrate and scale digital solutions to flexibly support all stages of clinical research to obtain meaningful outcomes. So, CBCC Global Research is there to help you accelerate the development of therapies for cancer by providing high quality, affordable, and innovative solutions, especially in this new normal.
Thank you for listening to CBCC Global Research Podcast.